Which one of these guys is going to be the world's first trillionaire? And what does it mean for the rest of us when a single person controls that much wealth? Let's talk about it. So you might have heard that recently Elon Musk became the first person ever to have a net worth of more than $400 billion. Elon has a great shot of becoming the world's first trillionaire, but he's not the only one in this race. Today, Elon has a net worth of $474 billion according to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index, so just short of $500 billion. Over $300 billion of his net worth comes from stocks and options tied to Tesla. $136 billion comes from his stake in SpaceX. Another $25 billion comes from his ownership position in xAI. And then he has far less valuable stakes in companies like X, The Boring Company, which is focused on underground tunneling, and Neuralink, a company aiming to connect brains with computers. Anyway, because Tesla makes up so much of Elon's wealth, and because Tesla's stock is so volatile, Elon's net worth is also volatile. Earlier this year, Tesla's stock plunged because the electric vehicle market was struggling, and there were a lot of concerns about competition from other automakers. Tesla's stock fell pretty significantly during the first 4 months of 2024, pushing Elon's net worth down to as low as $164 billion. But since then, Tesla's stock has bounced back hard, reaching an all-time high for the first time in 3 years, as investors started to focus on a potential re-acceleration in Tesla's EV sales in 2025, and as speculation mounted that some of Tesla's more futuristic bets, like its autonomous robo-taxis and humanoid robots, would pay off. Since April, Tesla's stock has tripled, which is similar to the increase in Elon's net worth. But while Tesla has been the biggest contributor to the increase in Elon's net worth, it's not the only contributor. Elon has also benefited from gains in his other ventures. For instance, in its latest funding round, SpaceX, the maker of rockets, satellites, and spacecraft, was valued at $350 billion, double what it was worth a year ago. While xAI, the company behind Grok, a competitor to OpenAI's ChatGPT, was valued at $50 billion, which is incredible considering that Elon founded this company just last year. So if Elon is going to add another $500 billion to his net worth, the gains are probably going to come from an increase in the value of these three companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and xAI. And that's a big advantage for Elon in the race to become the world's first trillionaire. He has 3 high-growth companies driving his wealth, which is something that's unique among centibillionaires. But even so, it's not a foregone conclusion that Elon wins the race to trillionaire status. Right now, Elon is by far the richest person in the world, with a net worth that's double the next richest person, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, who has a net worth of around $250 billion. But $250 billion is still obviously an incredible sum of money and puts the Amazon founder a quarter of the way towards $1 trillion. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg is also up there with a $220 billion net worth. And there's a bunch of other people, like the founders of Google and Microsoft, as well as members of the Walmart family in the $100 to $200 billion net worth range. Now, getting from $100 billion, $200 billion, or even $300 billion to $1 trillion is no small feat. These people have to 3x, 5x, or 10x their wealth to get there. In order to accomplish that, they have to own assets with a lot of upside potential. And ideally, assets that can appreciate quickly in value if they want to be the first one to reach that $1 trillion milestone. A guy like Bernard Arnault, the founder of the luxury goods conglomerate LVMH, isn't in that category. His companies like Louis Vuitton and Sephora are great companies, but I don't think they have the type of growth potential that could multiply his wealth quickly enough for him to become the world's first trillionaire. The same goes for the Walton family. Walmart stock has performed incredibly recently, nearly doubling from where it was at the start of the year. But again, Walmart isn't a high-growth business, so the stock probably won't keep surging at the same pace. Someone like Jeff Bezos, on the other hand, has a shot. He's number 2 on the list right now, and his company Amazon operates in some high-tech, fast-growing industries like AI and robotics. That said, I think the biggest competition for Elon is Mark Zuckerberg. Meta has all of the ingredients to be an incredibly massive company. I mean, obviously it already is, but I think it could become substantially bigger if some of Meta's investments in AI, VR, and AR pay off. So I think the first trillionaire is going to be one of these two guys, either Elon or Zuckerberg. Which brings us to the next question: when might we see the world's first trillionaire? I think that depends on whether the first trillionaire is Elon, Zuckerberg, or someone else. If it's Elon, I think it's going to happen relatively soon. The stocks of all his companies have a ton of momentum right now, and the market environment is ripe for them to continue appreciating. On the other hand, the high valuations of Elon's companies companies are predicated on optimism about future growth. If that growth fails to materialize or investors turn more pessimistic about Elon's companies, then his net worth could tumble, just like we saw back in April. But if the stars do align, Elon could potentially reach trillionaire status in the next few years, maybe even in 2025. Shares of Tesla and SpaceX have doubled over the past year, while XAI has gone from nothing to a $50 billion valuation in that same time period. I'm certainly not saying that that type of performance will repeat itself, but we are in an increasingly exuberant market environment, so it could happen. Now, for Zuckerberg, it'll probably take longer. Given he owns roughly 13.5% of the company, Meta's market capitalization would have to reach something like $7.5 trillion for Zuckerberg to become a trillionaire. That's a 5-fold increase compared to where it is today. At a 20% growth rate, that would take 9 years, while at a 30% growth rate, that would take 6 years. So, if Elon's companies falter, Zuck has a great shot at becoming the world's first trillionaire. Of course, there are no guarantees, and it's possible that neither of these guys becomes a trillionaire, or at least the world's first trillionaire. But even if that's the case, I think it's almost a certainty that the world will have not only a trillionaire, but multiple trillionaires. Most billionaires are going to grow their wealth over time. Their companies are going to get bigger and more profitable, making them more valuable. A 15% return compounded over a decade quadruples someone's wealth, while 15% compounded over 15 years leads to an 8-fold increase. So anyone with a net worth of $125 billion today could conceivably become a trillionaire in the next decade and a half if they can generate those types of returns. That's why I think there will eventually be a world of multiple trillionaires. And those trillionaires will include people who are currently among the world's richest people and other people who rise the ranks in the future. Trillionaires are inevitable. In fact, we'd already have a trillionaire today if Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, didn't decide to sell his shares. When Microsoft went public in 1986, Bill Gates owned just under half of the company. If he kept that stake, it would be worth $1.7 trillion today. But of course, Bill Gates didn't keep those shares. He's been steadily reducing his position to the point where now he owns less than 1% of the company. There's no need to shed any tears for Bill. He's still worth $165 billion, and a lot of his money has gone to charity. It's a similar story for Bill Gates' good friend, Warren Buffett. If he continued to hold the nearly 500,000 shares of Berkshire Hathaway that he had 2 decades ago, he'd be worth $341 billion today. Instead, he's given away nearly half of his shares, and he has plans to give away all of them eventually. I think Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are well aware that past a certain number, the amount of money that you have doesn't matter all that much. $1 billion is already an unbelievable amount of money. At a 5% interest rate, that's equal to $50 million of income per year. You could essentially buy anything that you want. $1 trillion or 1,000 billions is an ungodly amount of money. It's equal to $50 billion of income per year at a 5% interest rate, or more than the GDP of half of the world's countries. $1 trillion is also more than the current market value of Walmart, as well as all but 10 companies in the world. So to have this insane amount of wealth in the hands of one single person would just be ridiculous. But what could they do with this trillion that they couldn't do with $1 billion, $10 billion, or even $100 billion? Well, if you're talking about consumption goods, nothing really changes. Beyond a certain level of wealth, it doesn't really matter how much money you have. At $10 billion, someone can already buy all of the houses, private jets, and luxury yachts that they want. Where it potentially changes things is the level of influence that someone can have in society. Rich people have always been able to shape politics and culture, whether through campaign donations, lobbying efforts, or owning media outlets like newspapers and TV stations. But with $1 trillion, the level of influence could be amplified dramatically. Instead of spending a few $1 million to influence elections, they could spend hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. Instead of owning a newspaper that reaches a few million people, they could own a social media platform that reaches hundreds of millions of people. With the enormous resources that they have, they could spread their influence far and wide. Not just in America, but across the entire world, shaping public opinion, government policies, and even cultural norms on a global scale. We've already seen this happen to some extent with everything that Elon Musk has done over the past year. Elon is obviously a very unique individual, but I don't think he's going to be the only ultra mega rich person who uses their wealth to spread their influence. As the ranks of the centibillionaires and eventually say trillionaires grow, we're gonna likely see others use their massive resources in similar ways. So we'll see what happens. In some ways, we're in uncharted territory when it comes to the level of wealth that a single person has. No human in history has ever had the amount of wealth that Elon has right now. Even titans of the past, like John D. Rockefeller, didn't have anything close to this amount of wealth. Maybe you could say some authoritarian leaders of relatively large or rich countries, like Russia's Putin or Saudi Arabia's MBS, have similar levels of wealth. In a certain sense, they might even be richer, but it's hard to quantify that. But in terms of private citizens, we've never seen this level of wealth before. And as I explained in this video, the rich are only gonna get richer. It's only a matter of time before the world has its first trillionaire. Anyway, I hope you found this video interesting. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.